I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Playing from the Tips, our special PGA Championship preview show with all you need to know about the year's second men's major. Oak Hill Country Club will be the host this week and we'll get a deep dive on that, as well as some tips on who might win, our top Aussie and some outside chances, all presented by Golf Australia magazine. I'm your host, Jimmy Emanuel, and along for the ride with me today are two so-called experts to help with this deep dive, including one we've brought in via the magic of technology all the way from New Jersey, where he will be on site all week. But first, let's go to the man beside me in the studio, Golf Australia's Monday columnist, podcast extraordinaire, and the writer of one of the best yarns so far this year, Rod Morri. Rod, welcome and congratulations on your piece on the G4D Open and Brendan Lawler.
Very, very kind of you. A bit harsh with the so-called on our other guest.
We'll get to that.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But he shouldn't.
Yes. Next, we bring in a special so-called expert who is replacing the white-hot tipping machine that is Adrian Logue, who's currently in transit back from Denmark and his maiden Himalayan scouting trip for tipping later in the year. And who better to replace him than his four-ball partner and former tour pro turned commentator, Ewan Porter. Ports, welcome from Oak Hill.
It's good to be here, Jimmy, and joining yourself and Rod, such esteemed company, and big shoes to fill. Adrian Logue, I'm nervous. I'm going to give it a crack.
Massive shoes to fill. You just have to talk about things no one else understands or cares about.
Get a print out of the field, paste it on the wall, get a dart, close your eyes, throw it. That's how he does his tipping. It's worked so far, and it'll probably work for you too. How he has done it is just beyond me.
He didn't have a win last week, thankfully, because if he had, he would be unbearable, more unbearable than he normally
exactly right.
is.
Anyway.
Mentioning those tips, we'll take a brief look back at last week, and Logue's heater did cool slightly, and even though we were without a winner combined, we did have 6 top 10s. Honourable mention for myself and Logue, who both had players pipped in playoffs in Minjee Lee and Cam Smith. So we go to 12 wins and 87 top 10s this year so far.
Indeed. I think you and Logue will probably, you'll be the only person more disappointed than Minjee Lee with that putt in the playoff.
Yeah, I wasn't real happy when I saw that first putt.
And the second one too, just very un-Minjee. Like, that was really interesting. We'll talk about that on another show at a different time. But I really
just to butt in there, what's your stats this year? What did you say? How many wins? How many top 10s for the
12
year?
12 wins, 87 top 10s.
For this year?
Yeah.
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 We don't muck around.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, if you were backing our tips to have top 10s each week, you'd be making more than a journo and a podcast host, I've got to tell you.
You've got me thinking. I might not see you next week.
Let's jump onto this week in the PGA. And first, I wanted to get a bit of feeling around the United States with you, Ports, having covered the 2 most recent events on the PGA Tour and now this week, and how things are shaping up and a general vibe for what is considered sometimes the poor cousin of the major championships.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I saw a tweet the other day about the last 5 PGA championships, and they've all been absolutely cracking finishes when you think about it. And I mean, that's stretching back to Brooks Koepka at Bellerive. He just pipped Tiger, remember there, and Adam Scott had a good chance to win. I won't go through every single one, but all the PGA championships have been close finishes. They're always on fantastic golf courses. It's always arguably the best field in golf via the world rankings, although that's obviously a little subjective topic at the moment. But there's no denying that it is a top quality field. And Oak Hill haven't been here for 10 years since Jason Duffner won in 2013. And you look at the leaderboard from that week, the top 10 players were all incredible ball strikers. And I expect similar outcome this week. You've got to really strike your ball around here. You can't fake it. And it's certainly been interesting. The last couple of weeks out on tour, being at the Wells Fargo Championship, which Wyndham Clark shot 19 under par, which I just didn't see that in my wildest dreams because the course was set up like a major championship. It was really, really tough. And then last week at TPC Craig Ranch, where everyone seemed to shoot 62, 63 or 64, they were just everyone was tearing it apart. So you've had 2 different weeks, the last 2 weeks, and then the toughest of the tests this week.
Certainly looks that way. And
just on the PGA being the book, it suffers, doesn't it, Ewan, a bit from being seen as a bit of US Open light. The other majors have a real character to them. You talk about the tennis majors, and each one's played on a different surface. The PGA gets wrapped up, because you're right, it's always got the best field. The courses are always good, but they always feel a bit US Open light. They're not adventurous with the way they set up the courses. We'll come to the course this week, but it would be terrific to see this week something where they're a little bit out of their comfort zone. I think that would really help the PGA.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, let's face it, it had its own identity, didn't it, when it was match play? And then they switched it to stroke play. And if you look at the 4 Grand Slams in tennis, they've all got their own identities. And you're right. I don't know what the answer is, but it needs something. Take it international.
Take it international. Every 4 years.
I think we're all fans of that.
I think everyone outside of America is a fan of that concept. I mean, imagine playing this week in Japan or something like that. You've got the brotherhood of the PGAs internationally. It's the one that's got an international thing to pin itself on, which is this brotherhood of PGA and PGA memberships. It doesn't have to be every year, but it would really make a lot of sense in terms of that identity. It would make a lot of Americans unhappy, but it would really do something, I think, for the event and for world golf. So anyway. Yeah, and I think this year we might be at risk of that US Open light feeling, despite the work they've done at Oak Hill, the way it's going to be set up. I've heard a player mention, reminds me of Winged Foot, which great golf course, but US Open golf course. So, of course, one of those last couple that Ewan mentions was last year, where Justin Thomas claimed a second comically oversized Wanamaker trophy after Mito Pereira had a final hole meltdown. And then there was a playoff where Will Zalatoris again looked like he was going to win a first tournament at a major. And unfortunately, Will's not there this week, but Justin Thomas, of course, is. And a quasi-defending champion in Phil Mickelson, who returns after his 2021 effort. Like last year, we're at a restored major championship venue. And Rod, can you tell us a little bit about Oak Hill Country Club?
Look, fabulous venue, Donald Ross Golf Course, beautiful. Ewan's on site, he'd be able to tell us a little bit more of how it looks on the ground, but it's absolutely fabulous. It'll be somewhat familiar to us because it's hosted 6 majors all up, 3 PGAs, 3 US Opens. This will be the 4th time at PGA, but it'll be unrecognisable this year from what we saw the last 2 that I can remember. 2003, Sean McKeel, we all remember that 7-iron he hit on the 72nd hole, as does he, I'm sure. And 2013 with Jason Duffner, who, as you rightly pointed out, Ewan, just was the ball striker of the year in 2013 from my recollection. His putting was suspect even that week, and he still managed to get the job done as well. This golf course is going to look completely different. They've redone or restored, really, pull out all the old photos and undone a bunch of work done by Robert Trent Jones in the 50s and then some more work done by Tom and George Fazio in the 70s, which really did change the character of the course. There was also a member early on who had a real tree planting fetish. He was an arborist and planted literally thousands and thousands of trees. Lots of those have been removed. The course looks better for it. To me, the biggest change here looks to be the greens. There's some really wild shapes and some really interesting-looking putting surfaces, and that's going to make the tournament really, really interesting. From the early pictures, it looks like narrowish fairways, deep rough, fairly sort of standard stuff. You kind of have to do that in some ways these days. Well, you sure 19 under at Quail Hollow, Ewan, you've played tour golf and you couldn't see it happening, and these guys go out and 19 under doesn't win going away. It wins, but it's not. So, look, you've got to do something, I suppose, to somewhat control the scoring, and that's how they'll do that. But it'll be really interesting to watch around the greens. It looks like a real mixed bag. There's quite longish rough around a lot of the greens, but there's areas where they've cut at fairway height. We saw some tweets this morning from No Laying Up Max Homer with a 5-iron, a lob wedge, a putter from over the back of the second green. I think you'll see a lot of that. That gets really interesting the longer the tournament goes on, where those choices have to be made. That's when you would know this, Ewan, late on a Sunday afternoon, if you have to make a decision rather than having the play dictated to you, you really find out who's got all of the bits of their game in place, don't you, when you've got to make a decision, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Look, the bunkering looks pretty severe. They've got some really steep faces and really high faces. You might even see a couple of players in various times have to chip out backwards this week. That won't make them happy, but that's the way it's going to be. And to my eye, the faces of the bunkers are actually covered in heavy rough this week. Yeah. That could present some really tricky ones. You get a ball flying in there and sticking on the face, there's going to be some really awkward stances. Look, it's going to be entertaining golf. I think I'm looking forward to this more than I expected to, because of the nature of the golf course. I think it'll do what a major should do. It'll separate out the players that have got all of the elements firing. It really will be the 157th player in the field this week, and that's how golf should be. That's when golf's at its best. So, really looking forward to it. And look, Donald Ross is synonymous with great golf courses, and this one is a good one. The routing looks really interesting. It looks like a beautiful journey that the course takes you on. The 14th green is sort of up near the clubhouse, and some great resources. Jeff Shackleton did a fabulous piece in his Quadrilateral Substack, and there's a fantastic video on YouTube the Fried Egg did talking to Andrew Green, who did the rework recently. He said, you get to that 14th green, you almost feel like you're home, but you've still got 15, 16, 17 and 18 to go. I think you'll get the feel of that this week. I'd imagine that the vibe there is superb too. Ewan, it just feels like the sort of golf course that when you step on there, you feel golfy. That's a ridiculous thing to say, but that's how it looks from the outside.
Yeah, and although we're in northwest New York, we're probably 5.5, 6 hours from Manhattan. It's really got a Westchester type feel where Wingfoot is, and that whole area is synonymous with great golf around there. There's 10 or 12 absolutely brilliant golf courses, old school golf courses that are not 8,000 yards long like a lot of them are these days. But I mentioned before about the ball strikers really rising to the fore here at Oak Hill, but I was chatting to Matt Every, who's won a couple of times on the PGA Tour. I was chatting to him in the hotel before, and he played a practice round. He played 2 practice rounds, with Jason Duffner here in 2013 when Duffner won. And he said Jason Duffner had the yips that week. He said if you go back and watch the tape, it was right in the middle of him going through his putting woes. They continued to get worse after that. But if you have a look at his putting stroke, you almost want to turn the other way. He was barely getting the ball to the hole. He was dribbling it in the sides of the hole. I don't think you're going to see that this week because of the redesign of the greens. And what I mean by that is, yes, the ball strikers are going to have an advantage by keeping in play, obviously, but you're still going to miss quite a few greens throughout the week, no matter how good a ball striker you are, because of how the putting surfaces are, which means then, what does that mean? Obviously, you've got to have a good short game as well. And I love the fact that there are plenty of holes around here where you've got multiple options around the greens and you can see a lot of different shots. So whilst the ball strikers will still be at the top of the leaderboard, I feel it's definitely more of a test of your all-round game and every facet of your game than I think it was in 2013.
Yeah. Great winners list at Oak Hill
very much.
As well, where in majors you've got Carrie Middlecoff, Lee Trevino, Jack Nicklaus, Curtis Strange, Sean McKeel, Jason Duffner. So it sort of tapers a little bit, to be fair, but there was a Ryder Cup there. Yep. Hank Keeney won a US Amateur there. Miller Barber won a Senior Open there. So it produces good winners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that, talking about Duffner's putting that week, and I'm pretty sure he shot 63 one of the days, did he not? And I can recall a putt on the 17th or 18th that wouldn't have been more than 2 feet, and it barely got to the hole. It was horrible to watch. You really felt sorry for the guy. You thought Sunday was going to be a disaster for him. I did at the time, because you can't see that holding up, and yet he did it. So 4 marks to him.
We mentioned what we need to find a winner. Ports, have you got a few players you think we should keep an eye on, maybe that you've seen in the last couple of weeks or heard some good signs out of?
Well, 3 players that I followed last week all finished top 10 here in 2013. Adam Scott, Jason Day, Hideki Matsuyama. Hideki didn't drive the ball well at all last week, so I'm putting an X next to his name. Jason Day obviously has been trending, playing brilliant golf. He wins. Don't think he's going back-to-back just because statistically it is so hard to do, and it would have drained him a lot last week. If he hadn't have won last week, I would have said yes, big chance, but I just don't think he's going back-to-back. I spoke a lot to Adam Scott last week, and I honestly think he's your man this week. I really, really do. And I and probably we are a little bit biased because we know him and, we're friends with him. He's a good guy. He plays well, but everything that I've seen the last 2 weeks has just been pointing towards something big happening for Scotty. And, whilst he likes to win tournaments, he even said to me, I've had one eye on next week for quite a while. And he played well here 10 years ago, and he's my pick.
He's your pick. There you go. Outside of those players mentioned as well, you've got the big names to watch of Rahm and Scheffler and Rory, all these sort of guys who are going to be there or thereabouts. You'd think coming back from Liv, you've got Phil and Brooks. Brooks seems like in a winning mood, and this is a Brooks sort of a golf course.
Loves having
Dustin
something to
Johnson
prove.
wins last week in a playoff despite having a triple in the final round, which is quite unbelievable. And then Cam Smith, of course, as well. So it's, as mentioned a few times, an exceptionally deep field with a lot of winners potential out of there. We've got Ewan's tip. Rod, have you got a winner tip for us?
I just want to ask you on something about Adam Scott. Looks to me, I remember him saying a couple of years ago specifically that the window isn't open forever and he knows that the window is closing. That was 2 or 3 years ago, and we're 2 or 3 years on from that. From the outside, he looks like his headspace is right. And once you get to this level, you don't get there if you can't play. The headspace is potentially the most important. I agree with you. I haven't picked him for the tips this week because BJ got in first and tipped him. I really think he's a special chance this week. You know him probably better than all of us, I'd imagine, Ewan, both publicly and sort of privately. Does what I'm seeing from the outside feel right to you? The headspace is right where it needs to be for Adam?
For sure. I was speaking at length with him last week about the fact that this is his 23rd year as a professional, and he just seems as motivated and as rejuvenated, refreshed, enthusiastic, whatever adjective you want to use. He seems as happy about his game and as excited about what the future holds as ever. And he agreed. He said, I'm just, he said, we're always learning. And he's at a point now where he thinks he's finally figured just about every piece of the puzzle out. And the next 2-3 years, he feels like is when he's got to really put his stamp on it.
Yep, he won't be phased and he's physically great. I'm going to go with Rory. For some of the similar reasons. Rory's got a bit of something to prove. While he'll still be the favourite for a lot of people this week, he'll come in with less pressure and less talk about him than he normally does because he hasn't been playing terrifically well. We know he had an ordinary Masters. I think he's taken that step back he needed to after being the face of the PGA Tour in this war, quote unquote, with Liv, and he really grabbed that opportunity at the back end of last year especially. That all seems to have taken a back seat. Rory with something to prove and feeling good. I suspect he'll come in feeling good. I like his chances this week. If you're not picking John Rahm, and who can't pick John Rahm after what we saw at
just Jimmy, just before your pick there, I had the fortune of walking all 4 rounds with Rory at Wells Fargo 2 weeks ago, his last start, and it was very, very scrappy. I mean, I've seen some scrappy golf in gala days, and it was probably just above that.
That is that is the biggest demotion in the history of the game. Gala day for Rory.
Scrappy golf from the man you're replacing, I'm sure.
I take your point, Ewan, although at this level, as you know, one swing thought, and it all changes for a player like Rory. It only takes one swing on the range or one swing in the middle of the first round. So I take your point, but I feel like Rory's got something to prove, and Rory with something to prove feels dangerous.
Fair enough. I'm going to go with Max Homa this week. A lot to suggest the Rahms and Koepkas of the world, but ball strikers, Max is one of the best. I liked watching that video this morning, as you mentioned, of trying different things around the green. Didn't hit many good shots, but he was trying things, so that was good. He has an exceptionally subpar major record for as good a player as he is.
Good point.
Like really not good when you actually look at it. Best results of the PGA where he's made 2 cuts, so good on him. But he feels like a kind of guy, again, with a point to prove in the majors. He cops a lot of it on social media and sees more of it because he's very active. He also strikes as a real PGA Championship type of winner. So, if he's going to go well in a major, I feel like it's this one. Golf course is suiting him. New baby perspective. Ports is in the same thing. His commentary's improved because he's got improved perspective.
He's going to have a terrific week.
He's going to have a great week. So I feel the same for Max. And the video the DP World Tour put out of players arriving at the airport, he pulled one of the greatest travel moves I've ever seen of hooking his suitcases in a train and pulling them by one. So that's a winner's move. You can't fight me on that one.
Indeed.
In terms of...
Where does the Wanamaker trophy fit in that suitcase train?
Well, you take the trophy home and you get a photo of the baby in it, number one. That's first. So
do it on the 18th like Elkington did, if you like.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
That baby was not happy about being put in that cup.
That's right.
From memory.
I did hear from Elk one day about how many beers it takes to fill up the Wanamaker trophy, and I think it's 50-something.
So, just
kidding me.
Just enough to keep,
huge.
Just enough to keep Booney happy between Sydney and London.
In terms of the players as well, we've got quite a few Aussies in the field, so we'll run through those, including the ones that have been mentioned already. So we've got Cam Davis, Jason Day, Lucas Herbert, Minwoo Lee, David Micheluzzi, Adam Scott and Cam Smith. A few likely contenders there. In fact, across all of them, there's a fair few chances. big shout out to Dave Micheluzzi, who makes his major debut after making the cut in his PGA Tour debut, taking everything in stride and speaking really very positively about it and his experience playing at home to get a card over there, a card in Europe, I should say, and then some starts over there. But some genuine chances. Minwoo Lee, I think, poses as a very interesting one this week. Again, another ball striker who's growing in confidence and working away, but then goes back to PGA Tour events after majors and sort of tends to slip a little bit. So still trying to find his feet a little bit, which is a good segue into our top Aussie performer of the week. And Ports, I'd suggest you might think Adam Scott's going to be the top Aussie, seeing he's going to think he's going to win the tournament.
Yeah, let me think about that. Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
But there's some genuine picks there, aren't there? I mean, the Aussies are. Cam Smith's always going to be in contention in a major championship. I think Lucas Herbert's going to contend in a major sooner or later. He was top 5, top 6 with about 6 or 7 holes to go last year at Southern Hills. So wouldn't rule him out the realms of possibility either.
Well, you mentioned our fearless leader earlier, Rod. Brendan James came up with a good stat in his written tip that will be on our website later, that day after he wins usually has a top 5 in his next start, including his last 2 wins in 2018. He went top 5 the week after. Yeah. So that's an interesting little tidbit for those looking for an Aussie who might do well. For myself, in terms of the Aussies, I'm looking at Adam Scott because Adam feels like Jason did pre-last week. He's really, really close to putting 4 rounds of golf together, and there's just 1 or 2 things that just hold up from him really contending. Last week was really impressive. He drove the ball at times really, really well last week. Everyone wants to talk about Adam's putting. Driver is what dictates Adam's success these days. If he hits it straight enough, he hits it long enough still at 40 whatever years of age, but if he finds enough fairways, very important this week, he can really contend. Awesome ball striker. Putting sort of comes along with everything else with Adam, I think. So I think for top Aussie honours, it's got to be Adam Scott.
Is he ageing at half the pace of the rest of us? Like, I know he's 40-something, but he looks 20-something. Ewan, how's he managing?
Yeah.
He's got everything, hasn't he? What do you buy Adam Scott for Christmas? Really?
Look, the thing that I marvel at with Scotty is how elastic he is for his age as well. He's 43 in July. When Wyndham Clark won the Wells Fargo 2 weeks ago, second highest ball speed in the field, Adam Scott. And I mean, statistically, Jimmy, on that note, his putting's actually fairly decent. When he finds himself in contention, he generally putts well. His driving accuracy statistics the last 2 or 3 years have been pretty poor.
Yeah. Typically, when he hasn't played well, it's actually been other parts of his game. There was a period where his wedge play was really poor. It wasn't average, it was poor.
Grading on a curve.
Yeah.
He'll go all right in the gala days.
Yeah, well, Adam would be a great gala day participant, by the way. But his wedge play was poor, and that's why he struggled. And then people want to focus on the putting. You know, I've been on this for a long time, that his putting is not that bad. Statistically or in any other element.
Really
I've spoken... As a fellow long putter user, I've spoken with him at length about it and watched him a lot, and he really is a very solid putter. He's not a brilliant putter, but he's a solid putter, and that's what you need to win PGA championships realistically these days. But the driving is key. Rod, a top Aussie from you?
I can't go with Adam Scott because you two guys already have. I made my case for him, and I think Cam Smith, I'd put him in that same kind of thing. You can be pro or anti-live or whatever. He feels a bit like he's languishing over on live, and he played really well last week on a golf course that didn't look terrific. They had the ice storm through there and the conditions were tough. But that head-to-head with DJ in particular would have been really important for him coming into this week. That's proper golf against proper golfers in a seriously competitive environment. That will hold him in good stead this week.
Another first putt in a playoff that looked horrendous. Looked like it took just a massive dive left off something as it rolled onto the green. But he was very good in the last round. He's shown those signs again that he's getting there, and he's starting to feel like a guy who's going to play those live events, maybe pick off 1 or 2, but then show up at the majors and have that extra kick along. So a good one there. Before we go for the week, I think we should, in Logue's honour and absence, come up with any left field stories we're looking at for the week.
Ricky Fowler.
Well, there you go. There's a left field tip, but I think there's always interesting parts of the PGA that we don't go to, like the club pro element. They probably don't do a great job necessarily of talking it up too much before, but it's one of those things that I think is interesting. Steve Alker gets a start this week, which is interesting to watch a Champions Tour guy go head to head with the main tour guys, I suppose you'd call them. And also, it's a great week for American golf names. And this week, we've got one of the best, one of my personal favourites, being Wyatt Worthington II, who makes his second PGA Championship start. So, quality name for Wyatt.
The second.
The second.
See, make a mistake, shame on me. Make it twice, shame on you.
But best, if he has a son who he calls Wyatt Worthington III, he would be WWW, and he could be nicknamed Website.
Oh, dear.
Well, then I guess with Wyatt Worthington II,
he's World War II.
WW2, World War II.
Yeah, maybe
World
he's
War
not.
II, World War II.
So every 9 holes, he's looking between 39 and 45. You know?
But
what about Victor Hovland this week? I mean, I think Victor Hovland's due fairly soon as well.
Yeah.
And Xander.
I think Victor Hovland's a great caller. Chipping is always the worry, but it's improved a lot. He works very hard at it. But
such a great attitude. I mean, imagine being that good a player and that poor a chipper and being able to see the funny side. It's extraordinary. It really is quite the gift. The PGA always feels to me, Ewan, it's almost a PGA Tour premium event. It really suits the guys who play the PGA Tour week in and week out, it feels like. And that's why I think it throws up these winners that we call unexpected, the Sean McKeels and some of those. It's because all those guys can win week in and week out on the PGA Tour, or most of them. And this is the major where they feel perhaps the most at home. So there is a list of names. Cameron Young, we haven't mentioned. You'd have to think has got a chance this week.
Yeah.
Fowler, definitely. Ricky Fowler's trending beautifully. I mean, he hasn't missed a cut since last October. He's the sort of player who could bob up at a PGA. There's a real sort of feel to it. No, that is the sort of thing you could see this week. And Victor Hovland's a great call, I think.
I think no one would be upset if Ricky Fowler snagged a major championship at this stage.
No, and if he ended his career with a PGA, it would feel right.
Yeah,
you know, and
I agree with that.
And and he'll come in with almost no pressure on him this week. Nobody's talked about Ricky Fowler except in awful terms for the last couple of years. Right. He's playing a lot better than most have noticed. So anyway, look, he'll probably be at the back of the green regardless on Sunday afternoon. whether it's grabbing the trophy or congratulating somebody. I'm only kidding.
Despite my interest in Wyatt, for my outsider tip, I'm going to go with another Aussie in Cam Davis, who real up and down year, but kind of like Homer, he's a real PGA type player. Really good ball striker, but it just seems to be, he's won on the PGA Tour, he's played a President's Cup, but seems to be needing a next kick along. And I think getting into contention, genuine contention at a major late on Sunday could be that. It'd be a huge ask for him to win, but he could show something here, Cam, I think, and really get in the mix, hopefully.
Likes a big moment too. Does not shy from the big one. That first Australian Open, when he won the Australian Open in 2017, came from nowhere, almost unheard of, and just shot lights out back nine on Sunday. Just extraordinary stuff to win it. Yeah. No fear whatsoever. So
outstanding caddy in Andrew Shooten as well, who worked for Harrison Crowe at the Masters because Cam wasn't in the field. And I spoke to Harrison last week and his parents, and they could not speak highly enough of the work Shoots did for him. And if he was guiding his man in a major, getting close, I'd back him in too. So... Well, that will bring to a close all of what we need to know about the PGA Championship. A big thank you for Ewan Porter for joining us and giving the so-called expert fraternity some credibility that all the others do their best to remove. Ports, thank you for coming along for the ride.
Thanks, Jimmy. Anytime. Thanks, Rod.
Joy to catch up, mate. Really enjoyed it.
And you can keep up to date with all the action from the PGA Championship on our website, golfaustralia.com.au, throughout the week, where there will be things like Aussie TV guides, Australian player profiles, daily stories from the event, and so much more. You can also get that all delivered to your inbox via our daily newsletters, which you can subscribe to on the website. Thanks for listening and enjoy the 105th PGA Championship.